There is a war against comedy in America right now. And in this video, I want to talk about the reasons why I think it's absolutely stupid and it needs to change almost immediately, but I doubt it will. So, to give a bit of background on my opinion of comedy and humor and its usefulness, I think of soldiers, and more specifically, I think of the show Band of Brothers, and I think of the situations they went through and all the traumatizing things they saw. And something that was consistent throughout the entire show was their sense of humor. They were always cracking jokes. They were always using it as a tool, as a psychological tool. And that's my way of perceiving humor and comedy is it's a tool. It's something that you use to help yourself rise above a certain situation. And needless to say, whether you're police, EMT, firefighter, military, you're going to go through some traumatizing events, no doubt. I mean, I have friends that are in all those positions and I've heard some of their stories and that shit's bonkers. But again, your sense of humor is probably going to match, or it should match, the event you're going through. So the darker times you're in, the more traumatizing the events you're in, your sense of humor is going to match that level. And there's a psychological reasoning behind this, because if, say, for example, you are an EMT or you are a firefighter and you're dealing with death all the time, you're going on calls where, you're seeing little babies that are, run over by cars, you're seeing old men who have lit themselves on fire because they're depressed. You're seeing neglected elderly people in old folks' homes where the people who work there don't give a rat's ass about those old people. You're going to see a lot of terrible things. And so how can you cope with that? Well, one of the ways is through humor. Now, again, this isn't this isn't a permanent fix. Humor, comedy, it's just something you use as kind of a tool to keep yourself floating. I don't want you to think that I'm saying that comedy is the only way to keep yourself afloat when times are getting really hard. It's very effective, but you should see a therapist. You should see a psychologist. You should have, a support group, whether it's your partner or some friends you can talk to. You should have someone you can, really dive into these things and really express how you're feeling and how it's affecting you. You should definitely have all that. But at the same time, you need comedy. And you need a sense of humor in these in troubling times, because again, it does help you rise above a situation. And there's nothing more badass than being in a situation that's your life is on the line, and you're kind of like making light of it. You're kind of like, wouldn't it be funny if I died right now? Like, I've lived long enough, right? I like to think back to when one of my family members had to be checked into the hospital, and they were getting a lot of, this specific family member has a lot of female friends. So he was getting a lot of, female friends coming in and saying, oh, this is terrible. What's happened to you? And he was getting really sad because every single one of them was like, oh, this situation's, it's crap. But I'll never forget, one of his best friends walked in, saw him in the room and was like, well, we both know you'd end up here eventually. And they just busted up. Like he said, it was like the funniest thing he'd heard all day. And it made him feel a whole lot better. And again, this goes back to my whole point of, the more traumatizing of an event you're in, the more your humor needs to match that level. And this is the part of the video where I'm going to make a few stretches. I'm going to make a few claims. But again, it's all for the sake of trying to improve other people's lives. I'm not out here to say that like comedy and humor is the end all be all, but I am saying that it's a very useful psychological tool and it's very underrated. And right now I'm saying people are at war with comedy, more specifically people who want to thought police comedy and thought police what you can find funny, and that's wrong. And I think that mentality really needs to stop, like immediately. Because if I say to someone, hypothetically, if I say to someone, okay, don't make that joke because I find that offensive. Now, I'm denying that person of two things. Number one, I'm denying them of making light of whatever situation they're in. I'm also denying them of their psychological tool of comedy, because I don't know what that person's going through. I don't know why they're going through it. And maybe that's why they're using comedy, is they're trying to deal with that situation, and comedy is an outlet for them, and their sense of humor is dark because their life is dark, and so it's like it matches that. And so I have no right to say to someone else, you shouldn't say that joke anymore, because it offends me, or you shouldn't. The most I can ever say, I think, in my opinion, the most I can ever say to someone if I don't find their joke to be funny is to say, I don't think that's funny, or to just say nothing. Because I know I've done stand-up comedy a couple times, and if I make a joke and no one laughs, no one gives any reaction, well, then I know, okay, that joke probably isn't going to fly. But I don't think there's any reason to come in and to say, don't say that anymore. Like you're not allowed to make that joke anymore. I can't really agree with that sentiment because, again, not to make a stretch, but I feel like in the world and in America, and especially right now with COVID and all this shit that's going on, people are going through very stressful situations. And I think the last thing people need to hear, like imagine if someone, for the past 3 months has been struggling with depression, and all of a sudden they see something online that they think is hilarious. It's the funniest shit they've seen in months. Now, you need to think about this from two perspectives. Here's this person who's maybe been depressed for 3 months, hasn't really laughed at all. All of a sudden they see something and it just tickles their belly and they think this is the funniest God-sent, piece of comedy they've seen in their entire life. And they share it on Facebook and they just get jumped on by all these other people saying like, oh my God, how could you say this? This is offensive to me. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, you shouldn't make jokes like this anymore. Well, hang on now, because again, like I said, your comedy is going to match wherever you're at psychologically. So if you're in a shitty place, if you're in a terrible place, if a bunch of really bad stuff has been happening to you, guess what? Your comedy is also going to be at that low level, right? That's why military, that's why police, again, EMT, firefighters, nurses, doctors, that's why they have a dark sense of humor, because they're dealing with really heavy things all the time. And that tool, that psychological tool of humor, is how they use it to get out of it. Now, again, I'm coming at this from, as I said, using humor as a psychological tool. I understand, a lot of the time when people are making jokes, they're just trying to be funny. They're just trying to get a laugh out of some people. And I recognize that other people are just straight up assholes. And the reason for their comedy is to legitimately attack and belittle other people. And I don't agree with that at all. I think at the heart, I think intention is important. And although it's hard to understand, I think, at least from a person to person level, as long as my intention is, I'm just trying to get a laugh, or I'm just trying to make a joke of this. I'm not personally going after any one individual, or I'm not making this joke to specifically, ruin the life of someone else. As long as it doesn't meet those categories, I think everything should fly. Like, even if you make a joke about me, or if you say something about like me and you think it's hilarious and I don't think it is, again, the most I'm ever going to say to you is, I just don't think it's funny. But I'm not going to say to you, don't make that joke anymore. Like, it's offensive to me, therefore you can't say it. Because again, that's just putting my feelings above your feelings. And that's ridiculous. Like, you can't be thought policing other people. You shouldn't be subjectively going around pointing out other people and saying, okay, I don't find that's funny. I don't think that's funny. Shut it down. I don't think that's funny. Shut it down. If you get a group of 100 people in a room and run a bunch of, random YouTube cat videos, people are probably going to laugh at different ones. Everyone's going to have a different sense of humor. So there's absolutely no reason to make this some kind of objective thing when it's not objective. It's very subjective. And that's the heart of what I'm getting at, is we should loosen up on the restraints a bit. I think all this thought policing and all of this, getting people to conform to what you want and getting everyone to, cookie cutter streamline, it's a really bad idea, and it's a really dangerous road to go down. Because if you take away someone's humor, if you say to someone that's going through a really traumatic time and you're saying to them, hey, look, I know you're on your deathbed, you're about to die, but if you could just not make any jokes about dying, because it's kind of offensive to me and my dog, he's about to die, so like, but anything else is good, but like, just don't say, like, come on, man, like, fuck off. Like, seriously, like, someone's going through a really traumatic event and you have the nerve to be like, oh, well, I think it's offensive, so you shouldn't say it. Like, honestly, like, that's to me, that's the stupidest thing in the whole world. Like, if you are so bothered to go around policing other people's sense of humor, like, you've obviously not been through any shit. You've obviously, like, you've not had traumatic things happen to you. Because if you had, like, or even if you struggled at all in life, you would be very hesitant to go to someone else and tell them what they can or cannot do, especially when it comes to humor. And I'm very, very passionate about this because I firmly believe humor is a psychological tool to help people get out of shitty situations. And by denying people of that avenue and of that tool, and denying people of a creative freedom, like, people are going to find loads of things that are funny. People are going to find racist things funny. People are going to find, jokes about people's height, appearance, like, all this other stuff. Like, it's anything under the sun. But again, it's because we're human. Like, that's the cool thing about comedy, is people are going to find anything funny. And I'm not going to say to another person, well, I don't think that's funny, so therefore you shouldn't be able to say it. Or, I'm offended by that, so you shouldn't be able to say it. To me, I think it's a ridiculous claim. And again, I'm seeing more and more of it. I'm seeing more and more of this thought policing, and I'm totally against it. 120%. I think thought policing is the stupidest idea in the whole entire world. Because, not to quote Jordan Peterson, but to quote Jordan Peterson, in order to think, or in order to have the ability to think, you need to risk being offensive. And, if people are, if people are so transparent, if we really are that easy to understand, then why do we need psychologists? Why do we need therapists? Why do we constantly say to our spouses or our partners or our friends, I don't know why I did that? It's because we're way more complex than we realize. And I think to go towards this avenue, it's really the wrong way to go about it. I 100%. I don't like it. To bring up another example, there's a YouTube channel, VetTV, and they are unapologetically offensive. And they even say in their disclaimers and their trailers, they say, okay, hey, look, we're a comedy YouTube channel and we are very offensive. And the reason for this is we are trying to prevent veteran suicide. We would rather have a veteran laugh about blowing their head off than actually blowing their head off. And, I can get behind that sentiment. Like, who could not? Like, to me, I would rather be offended by someone's joke than telling that person they can't make jokes anymore, and then that person's psyche is affected. Then I'm robbing them of their tools to rise above a situation, and now I left that person with what? What's a person to say when they lose their job, when they lose their spouse, when they lose their kid, when their buddy gets shot, when they see a terrible traumatic event, and I go to that person and I say, hey, by the way, don't make any jokes about any of this. Don't laugh about any of this stuff, by the way, because it's offensive to me. So, but you can joke and laugh about other things, but just the whole whatever you find funny, I don't find funny. So if you could just not do that, that'd be great. That's basically what people are saying to other people now, and I'm kind of sick of it. So maybe I'll make another video on this topic. Maybe a lot of people disagree with me, but I, for one, I've kind of had it with people pulling the I'm offended card. Like, honestly, do you know what kind of a terrible situation all of us are in? Like, do you understand the gravity of what's happening around the world? Like, do you even know that in 2018, and just in America alone, 1.4 million people attempted suicide, and that suicide rates are on the rise? Like, more and more people are apathetic. More and more people are mentally unstable. More and more people are not getting the mental help they need. And so to rob people of a psychological tool, to say to someone else, no, don't make that joke anymore, I think it's offensive. I think it's bullshit. I don't think we're helping anyone. We're not doing anyone any favors by saying that. Like, And the best part is you might be offended by what I'm saying. You might say, well, look, we're trying to progress, we're trying to become a better society, and by not making these specific types of jokes anymore, by completely whitelisting out all these specific types of jokes, we become better. You know what I say to that? Bullshit. I say instead, it's like the same argument with like weed and like making weed legal. I think weed should just be legal. I do. Because I think way too many people are being convicted, put in prison, put in jail for selling weed. Like, come on. What about child trafficking? What about sex trafficking? Like, that's a real issue. That's where that's where all of our time should be spent. There are literal kids being kidnapped and used as sex slaves, and you're going to go and give a guy 5 years for smoking a joint with his friends? Like, come on now. I don't get it. Like, where are the priorities here? Who is being helped? Truly. I'm just tired of it. I'm so tired of the I'm offended culture. Like literally grow up already. Literally understand that people have it way worse than you, and you telling someone else not to say a joke because you find it offensive is the most condescending. It's the most condescending thing you can say to someone else. Like, the most you could say to someone is, I just don't think that's funny. I've said that so many times in this video, and I'm sorry. I'm just mad. I'm really mad. I think comedy needs to be freed. I think senses of humor, if you want to accept something, if you want to get an accepted and if you want to start an acceptance movement, do it around comedy and senses of humor. Like, bring back super dark humor, bring back super offensive jokes. I'm all for it, because I don't think anyone else has any better ideas, and I don't think limiting people's speech or limiting people's way to express themselves is going to do anyone any good. Like, that's like me going to a therapist and the therapist saying, okay, so like, you can tell me how you're feeling, but don't use the words the, a, or to. Okay, go. What have you done to that person? You've ruined them. You've ruined their train of thought. You've ruined how they process things. Now, here's the thing. I'll end the video with this, because I know this is probably what people are going to say. And people are going to say, okay, well, how about this, Austin? So let's say I'm with a friend and they say a joke and it is really offensive to me. Like, let's pretend they say some racist bullshit. Well, first of all, that person's an asshole, right? Because again, as I said before, it's about intentions. If this person's intention is just to have a laugh, they're not trying to attack any specific person. They're not trying to piss off any specific group. Like, they're just trying to have a laugh. Like, if that's the heart of what it is, I think it's okay. Again, no matter how offensive it is, I think it's okay. But if your friend is like making jokes about you, and it's derogatory towards you specifically, like the intent of their joke is to hurt you, again, just as if the intent of my jokes or the intent of my humor is to hurt other people, that's bad. But if their intent is just to have a laugh, and let's say you're part of that laugh, most you can say, I don't think it's funny. But I don't want to hear anyone say, you can't say that anymore, because that is bullshit. I'll see you all in the next video.